Okay, going just a second. Everybody, this is Greg Suddy, Suddy on Soccer, and I am so stoked to have Vini Dantas here with me today. I've been following this guy since he was playing with the Baltimore Blast, and he's always been one of my favorite players. Welcome, Vini, and thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go through your soccer story, my friend. I mean, it's taken you some places around the world, and it's been pretty fun sort of reading up on your bio, because what I didn't know a lot of the early stuff. Of course, I knew your time with Baltimore and Tacoma and Florida's here in the major indoor soccer league and the major arena soccer league, both. But let's talk first. You were born in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Yeah.
What was it like growing up in Brazil, my friend?
Blessing, right? To grow up in a country where the game I love is everywhere, and anywhere you step, you see soccer. The culture is soccer. Everybody breathes soccer. Sorry. It was awesome. And, since I can remember, I wanted to play soccer. My mom said that as a baby, I'll be in her arms seeing a soccer
it's kind
ball,
of the cultural thing.
Yeah, for sure. Craig, I think we have a little bit of delay. I don't know if it's on my end or your end.
Yeah, I'm having a little bit of it. Let's just go through with it, because I mean, I'm hearing everything. I can hear you just fine.
Cool.
There does seem to be a little bit of a delay between you and me, but yeah, I can hear you just fine. So you didn't come to the United States until you were 18 years old. How did that happen? How did it happen that you came to the United States?
So when I was in high school, I got involved with a ministry called Ambassadors in Sport. It's just a ministry that uses soccer to reach people, etc. And they actually invited me to come to Cleveland, Ohio, to run some camps with them for the summer and just kind of get to know some people there. They also had a team at the time called the Cleveland City Stars that used to be in the USL. I want to say USL 2 maybe at the time. I don't remember off the top of my head. So I came to the US. I was 17 at this time, and I trained with them for a little bit, did the camps, kind of got to know some people. And those were the people that guided me into, hey, you should do this for, you could potentially get a scholarship and do this in college. And I was like, that sounds awesome. I don't know anybody. I don't know, any colleges. I can look it up. But they all connected me. They connected me with Azusa Pacific University, which is a Christian school in California. And I went out there. I trained with them for a couple of days. And the coach at the time, called Phil Wolf, I believe he's the Point Loma coach now, right next to you guys. He liked what he saw, and he offered me a full ride. So I super stoked, went back to Brazil, got my paperwork in order, and came back.
Wow. And a lot of people don't know, Azusa Pacific University is a neighboring community. Azusa is a neighboring community to Ontario, where the Empire Strikers play. So I mean, you're literally right there at the foot of the San Gabriel Mountains, and that whole environment that is going on with that Inland Empire. What was that? How did that play out? I mean, that's an interesting geographic location, because you're close to the beach, you're close to those giant mountains right there. How did that play out from what you were used to growing up when you were down in Brazil?
I mean, I was just living a dream, right? To leave the area that I was at. I mean, I grew up in Sao Paulo. It's just a big city. Like, I've been to the beach and I've been places, but it was nothing like it. To go to, a place so close to LA, beautiful area, beautiful beaches, the mountains. I mean, our field, you literally have the soccer field, and all you see behind it is mountains. So it's beautiful. And it was an extremely
Right.
unique
Yeah.
opportunity. And I feel very blessed to be able to have, I did 3 years there, and I feel very blessed to be able to have those 3 years at Azusa Pacific.
Well, you also weren't you part of an NAIA national championship the first year you were there?
No, I came the year after that. So there was a class of 12 seniors that
Okay.
went to 3 championships in a row. I could be butchering this, but I'm pretty sure they went to 3 or 4 championships in a row. It was a very
Wow.
which was what coach called the golden class, and they were so good. They put Azusa every single year in a championship, but they lost 3 years in a row, and then they won that last year. But then you can imagine losing 12 players in one
Right.
season. One of them went to play MLS, which
Right.
was Steven Linhart.
Right.
So when I came in, the program was still really
Right.
good,
Wow.
and we held first in the nation for several weeks. And throughout my whole 3 years there, I don't think we were never ranked. I think we were ranked top
Okay.
25 every single year. So it was a very and the competition there is really good too with the conference that they had. So it was a lot of
Right.
really good schools and a lot of really good games.
Right. Have you kept up with any of the players that you went to college with? Are you still in touch with any of those guys?
Yeah, I got a couple that would have shown up to the San Diego game. Two of them actually live in San Diego now. And then I have a handful of friends that would have gone to that would go to the Ontario game. My coach too. My coach normally, whenever I'm out there, whenever I'm in San Diego, he comes down to San Diego. So, and then of course Ontario.
So now it's important, I think, that we mention. I think that okay. So I think it's important for us to mention, and I think most of the people watching probably know this already, but there has been a postponement of the game between the Texas Outlaws and the San Diego Sockers that was going to take place on Sunday evening, this coming Sunday. But you guys with the Texas Outlaws are still going to the game in Empire to play the Empire Strikers. I think it's Tuesday night or something like that. Right.
Yeah.
So you're still making your Southern California trip.
Yeah.
Right. So you're still making your Southern California trip. You're just not coming to San Diego.
Yeah. Which, you know,
the other thing I want to mention is, yeah.
No, go ahead, Greg. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say the next thing I wanted to mention was sort of the next step along the way. I mean, you got out of Azusa Pacific University, playing soccer there, and the direction that your career or your soccer journey has taken you after that point looked really interesting to me when I was reading about it, because you end up playing 3 years in Norway and Finland. So I mean, talk about how the heck that happened, and and how that whole experience was for you.
Yeah, you know, I joke with some people that are close to me that I never really went to school for a degree. I went to school for soccer. So my whole focus was soccer. During college, I was just grinding, trying to get to the next stage. And my junior year was a very good year for me. I scored a ton of goals in college, and I accomplished a ton of stuff. And at that time, really, it was like I didn't win a national championship with my university, but when I was looking at it, the next phase would really be try to be a professional. I had scored a bunch, done a bunch, won All-American, Conference of Player of the Year, and things like that, where I was just really, really hungry for the next phase. So I went for a summer, I went to help another friend of mine with a ministry that he runs in England called, at the time was 90 Plus Ministries. And all it is outreach to kids, just kind of go coach youth, and cool. Be role models to kids, while in that summertime training very hard for what would have been my senior year in college. During that time, I went to play a five-a-side game against some ex-Liverpool players. And during that game, after the game, actually, the guy came up to, at the end of the game, the guy comes up to me and says, "Hey, man, like, you're very, very good. Have you ever thought about playing professionally?" His name was Jason McAteer. He was a Liverpool legend. And I was like, it's my dream. I've been working really hard for it. And he said, I used to be the head coach or assistant coach of the Tremere Rovers, which is a third division team here in England, but I still have some influence there. I could get you through the door. And I was like, that sounds amazing. I love the opportunity. And really, that was no turning back at that point. I contacted my college coach. I was like, hey, this is happening. I went out for the tryout, and I think it was the first game I came in, and the team was down by 2. I ended up scoring a hat trick in 28 minutes of play, and turned the game around, and that pretty much earned my contract for outdoor. And then,
no kidding.
And then it was just, I signed a contract. England has very strict laws for their visas, like for work permits for foreign players. And it was pretty much, I signed it pending a work permit. And it didn't pan out. The work permit never came through because of these strict laws that they have. But at this point too, I have another ex-Liverpool player being my agent. And he actually got me to train with Liverpool reserves for about a week prior to me going out to Norway and playing for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and the Molde team that year.
So Vinny, the only reason you didn't stay in England was because of the contract difficulty with the visa difficulty.
Yeah. I had a contract. I was signed. I was training with the team. I stayed with them for over a month and a half, actually, just training and waiting for the process to kind of be finalized. But the visa never came through. So this was mid-August. The transfer window closed at the end of August. So it was a very tight period of time that my agent was trying to figure something out. But because of some of the stuff that I did during that month and a half, like that hat trick, and I was on the media a little bit and stuff, it was just like he was able to find a tryout for me in Norway. And then I just went out there and had to earn my contract again. But at that point, I was feeling really good about myself, and it just worked out.
So let me ask you, you're growing up in Brazil. The native language in Brazil is Portuguese, and then you come to the United States. When you came to the United States as a teenager, did you speak English already?
No. My English was really bad. My wife likes to point that out as soon as when we met, because me and my wife, we met pretty much first month of college. And my first semester of college, actually, a lot of my classes they were like below credit college levels. So like English 96 or something. It wasn't even the 100 level classes. So my first semester of college didn't count towards my my degree at all. It was just learning English, interesting. It was a process for sure.
Wow. Okay, so now you come to the United States, and then you find yourself going to England. Well, that's no big deal. Going to England, you speak English, the whole thing. But now you're going to
Yeah.
Norway. So what's that? What's going on with that? Did you end up? You spent 3 years. Didn't you spend 2 years in Norway and then 1 year in
Yeah.
Finland?
Yeah, about it wasn't two full, it was 2 seasons, but it
Okay,
wasn't 2 full
okay,
calendar years. And yeah, because it was
okay.
August through February, pretty much. No, August through March that I stayed. So August to August, and then another 7 months or 8 months or so. And then I went to Finland. But because Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was the head coach for Molde, which was the team that I was playing for, he actually had brought all
Right,
his
right.
coaching staff from Manchester United. So everything was in
Oh,
English.
gotcha.
They had like he
Oh,
would speak
gotcha.
Norwegian
Wow.
to some people, but the guy that was doing the main coaching, Mark Dempsey, he was British, and he would run sessions fully in English. So it wasn't as bad as it seems. I
Gotcha.
played for another team in Norway for a short spell, which was that September through March spell, which was Bodø/Glimt, which is also one of the biggest teams in Norway today. And during
Right.
that time, it was all Norwegian, and that was a really tough time.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people in Europe speak multiple languages. I mean, a
Yeah,
lot of people in Europe speak English. The English speak German, the Germans speak French, the French speak Italian. That's a pretty common thing. And of course, you were already speaking Portuguese, so I mean,
hmm
you knew Portuguese, and Portuguese is pretty close to Spanish. I mean, it's not
yeah,
that far off. I don't know. I don't know how it would be. I mean, personally, I don't know how it would be for a Portuguese speaking individual to actually carry on a conversation in Spanish. But I know that the the Scandinavian countries, those languages are completely different.
completely different. Yeah,
So it's
yeah. No, I
so
remember.
that's got to be an interesting
So
cultural experience to go through.
yeah, the website that I used to read the articles in Norway, there was this quick translated version of it that kind of would help me understand what the gist of the article was and stuff. Um, when I got to Norway, the team that I signed with, Molde at the time, they were first place in the league, and it was their 100th year anniversary, and they had never won the league.
Wow.
So it was a huge deal for them. They were like, they
Oh,
created this
wow.
huge thing. They brought Ole Gunnar Solskjaer for their 100th year anniversary. There was some major sponsors that came on board, and we won the league that year. And it's probably one of my most memorable
Wow.
soccer moments was we won the league by points, and then there was an international weekend, and then we had a home game. So technically, we were awarded the champions around end of October. I can't place the exact date. But our next game was like 14 days later.
Right,
So
right.
we were handed the trophy 14 days later, which gave me time to fly my mom and dad, my wife. They all flew to Norway for this specific day.
Oh, cool.
And my coach came up to me and was like, "Hey, you're going to start today." That was my first professional start ever and my first professional goal. So my mom, dad, my wife, my brother, they were able to be on the stands for my first professional goal, which is probably up there in my soccer memories.
No kidding. That is really cool, especially the travel. I mean, that's not like going from San Diego to Chicago. I mean, that's a major trip.
Yeah, yeah. I remember my parents had a layover in
That was a
Paris.
major
Like
trip for them.
that
Wow.
airport is crazy. And I honestly was just
Wow.
like, "Are you guys okay? Are you guys okay? Are you guys okay?"
Yeah.
Because my parents don't speak any English. They don't, the Portuguese is what they speak. And that airport in Paris is a monster. It's kind of like Atlanta
Right.
airport, so big, so many terminals. And I just kept like, "Are
Yeah,
you
I've
guys
been
okay? Are you guys okay?"
I've been to the. Are you talking about Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris?
Yes, that's the one. That thing is massive.
Yeah, Charles de Gaulle Airport. I've been there quite a few times. Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about. that is that is a monstrosity of a location, especially if you're completely unfamiliar with the airport culture, traveling all by itself. You're out of your
absolutely.
element. You don't know what the language. It's yeah. Um, that is a really that's a really cool memory. One of the viewers has put up in the chat room here. Um, should pop up here. That is a really cool memory that will stay with you forever. Indeed.
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
all right. So then you spent this time. Yeah, you spent this time in Norway, and then you go to Finland. That's again another different place to be. I mean, they're close together, but that's a completely different place. It's not like, again, it's not like going from the United States to Canada where people speak
No.
English. I mean, on both sides of the border. When you go from Norway to Finland, you're going into another culture and another language. So that's got to be exciting. Now, how old were you at this time when this was going on? How old were you?
Finland, I was 23. 23.
Okay, that's so
20,
cool. That's
yeah,
so cool.
23,
And
turning
then the next thing that
24.
you got coming up is you. Okay. And so the next thing you have coming up in your bio is that then you come across back to North America, and you're playing in Ottawa. Um,
Yeah.
and so now we've talked about how you got over to Europe. How did you find yourself getting back to North America? How did that happen?
Honestly, my time in Europe was awesome. It was tons of experience, but those countries are small countries. The cities are smaller cities. The weather, so there was some major things that was really hard to cope with. Like, I decided to live Norway because if you look at
Right.
Bodo Glint on the map, you're really like on top of the globe. And it's like 1 p.m. in the afternoon. It's
Yeah,
as dark as
absolutely.
10 p.m. at night. So it's just it was hard for my wife
Yeah.
to really
Yeah.
get her life going there. So when the season ended in Finland, me and my wife had a conversation, and we decided that maybe the best thing for us would be to come back to North America and try things in the US. At that time, I was fully free agent. I had a pending offer in Scandinavia that I just explained to them, hey, this is where I'm at in life right now. You guys can put a deadline to this, and I'll give you an answer by the deadline. But my focus is I'm going to go back to the US and try to do things over there. And I came in, I went to Chicago Fire. I practiced with the Chicago Fire preseason for about 2 weeks or so. That didn't work out. At the same time that I got the Chicago Fire offer, I had an offer from Ottawa, and we're talking about MLS 2014. It's a much different MLS than you see today.
Right.
Especially compensating
Absolutely,
rookies and things like that. So the NASL offer was actually a lot more appealing and a lot better offer than the MLS offer. So I ended up going to the NASL and doing that.
And that was the Ottawa Fury. You played with them for one season. Now that's not. Now here's where the transition takes place. So you haven't given up on outdoor soccer yet. You're still going to play a season in Pittsburgh outdoors, But this is where you jumped into during the off season, the outdoor off season, you jumped into the indoor game. Now, I want to ask you a couple questions about that before we talk about the details of it. By the way, I want to say, hey to Philly. Philly's in the chat. What's up, Vinny? What's up, Greg?
How's it going, Philly?
But the thing is, I want to ask you is the transition of going to indoors. Now, you played a lot of futsal when you were a kid. Had you ever played the indoor game with boards?
No. That's not a thing. That's not a thing in Brazil. Okay. So futsal is it, and that's what we do.
Right.
Yeah. So when the invite came over to go play indoor soccer, I'm just like, I had played a tournament of indoor soccer during that very first time I came to the US when I was 17. That that organization actually put a team together that went to Maryland, and I was a part of that team, and we won what they called it a national championship. I have no idea what they did to get there. But I played with them actually at a place that I ended up practicing a lot of times with Baltimore. But I had no idea that was gonna happen.
Wow.
But that was the only time I actually had played indoor soccer. To be honest, I didn't remember the 3-line rule, top of the box rule. I had no idea of those rules when I went back to Baltimore for an actual pro tryout. I was just, Tony Donatelli, he was my teammate in Ottawa. And he was the one to approach me and say, Vinny, would you like to come? Yeah. He was the one that brought me to the indoor game. He said, hey, man, because to be honest, looking back now, being 34 years old, I was never an outdoor soccer player. I don't know how I had 6 years of professional career, 2 championships. I have no idea how I managed that because I was built for more the futsal and indoor soccer than anything. So I'll be doing some very stupid things with the ball and outdoor that, looking back, I'm like, wow. Me, if I was my coach at the time, I would be losing my mind too. So I get it.
I was going to ask about that, and you sort of filled in the blanks. One of the things I find really interesting about the players in the MASL that are playing proficiently and doing it indoors. I mean, all of you guys play outdoor soccer when you're growing up. I mean, that's how the youth teams are put together. That's how the colleges are put together. So everybody's got the outdoor skills and talents. And even though there's a lot of indoor opportunities for pickup games or maybe off-season tournaments and stuff like that, to play it at the professional level, it's a different game. And it's interesting to me how some of you guys make that transition. How was that transition for you at first? I mean, did it just gel for you right away, or was it something that it took a little bit of time?
It was funny because later, much later, I think 2-3 years later, talking to Danny Kelly, and just asking him a basic question. I asked him, I was like, Coach, when did you know that, during that, because I tried out for one day, literally I went into Baltimore, trained one time. At the end of that practice, they were like, go back to Canada, get your stuff, and then you're signed. Right. And I asked Danny, I was like, Coach, at what point in that practice did you think that, hey, this guy can be an indoor soccer player? And he literally said, it was your first touch of the game. And it was just a long ball that was played to the boards. And I just turned around, and as that ball came to me, I just put my foot on it. As it was bouncing, I just put my foot on it, killed it, passed it back. And he was like, yep, I knew right there and then that you would pick up the indoor soccer game, no problem. So, sorry. So it was really, really quick. I mean, I went in there and truthfully, I really, a my traits, a lot of what my background suits me for indoor soccer. I would like it's a very good in-betweener between futsal and outdoor. And I think from that, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I had a very good rookie season. I contributed with some goals, and we ended up losing in the championship. But even that year was a nice transitional year for me.
So you end up playing, like we said earlier, you end up playing one more outdoor season with Pittsburgh Riverhounds before you absolutely make this commitment into the indoor game. What was that about? Was that because you just wanted to keep busy, or was it that you hadn't made a decision yet as to whether you were going indoors or outdoors, or how is that going? What was going on in your head at that time?
You remember, like, this is back in 14, 15 was my first indoor soccer season, right? And back then, you would have players that would do both.
Yeah.
They would be able to play indoor and then go to the outdoor game and then come back to the indoor. Right. Those years, actually, my first couple of years in the league was the years that completely changed, and you were no longer going to be able to do it. Because I remember my first year when we went to the playoffs, the team was already in preseason for a good month and a half, and we're well into March at this time. And by the time I get to Pittsburgh, the guys were already there for like a whole month. And the coach was like, "We understand. It was a contract that you had." And I did sign with Baltimore prior to signing with Pittsburgh. So at that time, it was understandable. But then the following season, they just pretty much said, "Hey, you either stay with us here in Pittsburgh," because I actually had a 3-year contract with Pittsburgh. They were like, "You either stay with us here in Pittsburgh, or if you go to Baltimore, we're gonna have to figure something out." And I kind of brought that to Baltimore because financially it's a major difference, right? Because outdoor, you're making 9 months salary plus whatever help they give you. Indoor is a much shorter season, things like that. At this point, too, me and my wife are kind of tired of living like this nomad life of just moving and moving and moving. And that's when Baltimore was like, "No, we really like you. We want to, we want your a key part of what we're trying to do here." So they put something on the table for me that made sense. That would make sense. Leave the outdoor contract behind and just fully focus in indoor. And that's when I fully transitioned out of outdoor into indoor.
So you were pretty much impact player on the indoor field from the get-go. I mean, I remember the 2014 seasons. I remember the those early years when you first started playing. What's interesting is I didn't realize at the time that you had just started playing because I wasn't following the MISL that closely, and the Baltimore Blast were playing in the MISL at the time. So when I first started seeing you play, I didn't realize that you just started playing. Talking about the MISL at that point in time, the MISL was using the multi-point system with 2 goals and 2 and 3-point goals. Did that really matter to you one way or the other, the way that that was being scored, or did that seem kind of bizarre? I mean, how did your head wrap around that scoring system?
Oh, it was weird. It was very weird because, like I said, I came to try out. And I mean, quickly earned a contract, and then they're like, "Go back to Canada." So I went back to Canada until the visa situation got sorted. I watched like 3 games, and I'm watching these games, and it's like 28-7. I think it was the first game I've ever watched. They were playing the Detroit team, and it was like 20 out. And I didn't know about the point system at this point. Like my tryout, we weren't counting goals. It was just practice. Okay. So I'm like, man, there was no 28 goals here. Like what's going on? And then talking to a couple of the guys in Baltimore later, they explained to me it's very bizarre. Like, I remember that system. I mean, kept it entertaining. I'll give it that. Like, I remember playing a game against I think it was Rochester, or I'm pretty sure it was Rochester. And I mean, the game was within a 3-point goal, right? So, and you have Mauricio Salas that
Right.
can strike the ball from anywhere, and that just made it an extremely interesting game, right? So it's it was weird, but I also got the
So Vinny, oh, by the way, up on the screen right now, Rick Benson, longtime and enthusiastic Baltimore Blast fan right there.
Rick.
Vinny is the reason I became a season ticket holder.
Rick is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it.
And you are that kind of, he's a good guy. But I mean, you are a charismatic soccer player. You make an impact on the field. And what's kind of cool about your play is that although you're going to score a goal now and then for sure, you don't have to be scoring goals in order to be impacting the field. The rest of this is my own observation. The rest of the team is better for your presence on the field, and the impact that you bring is substantial. And you experienced a lot of success in Baltimore. So for me, my first question is, what happened? What was the thing that made you go to Tacoma?
Family. It was a very crazy time with COVID, everything that was going on. But we had just had my firstborn, Mateo, and truly it was that season. I had I was working really hard, trying to do the best I could to help the franchise. But I had communicated to Baltimore pretty early that after this year, because me and my wife never really saw ourselves putting deep roots into Baltimore. We liked Baltimore. I love everybody. I have some real strong friendships in Baltimore to this day. But me and my wife, we never really saw ourselves like buying home and doing that whole like long life in Baltimore. So that season, I was gonna become a free agent, and it was almost like my son was born. I was becoming a free agent, and we were looking for what the next step would look like. My wife's family, the majority of them are from the Pacific Northwest. And me and my wife, we actually had a lot of desire to move to the Pacific Northwest because the times that I've been there, I really, really like the area, etc. So it kind of all clicked at the same time. We had our son, so we decided to move closer to the in-laws, and because my whole family's still in Brazil, it just made sense.
Right. Now this happened right after the season that the MASL did not play the playoffs. They cut the season short right before the playoffs. That was your last year with the Baltimore Blast. So
Correct.
So this season with Tacoma, ironically, right. So this season with Tacoma, ironically, is that year, that COVID year, where Tacoma and San Diego don't play a single home game the entire season.
Mm-hmm.
And Empire doesn't play a game. The Ontario Fury at the time, they don't play a home game until very late in the season during the playoffs.
Right.
And so every game is a travel game for you guys. Talk a little bit about that experience. I mean, every game is a travel game.
It was tough. It was tough because of all the restrictions in place and how we had to do things, and COVID testing very often, and it made it to like we could never really get into a good rhythm of practice, and then you're traveling, and then there is these potential quarantine times. I mean, we had an outbreak within the team that kept us all out for like 2 weeks. it was a very, very challenging time for sure.
Oh wow.
To really be like motivated to play the game, and with all the rules that were in place. And I get it, like it's you're trying to keep something alive while going through this what everybody's going through. I get it. It just, as an athlete,
Right.
you want to be there every day. You want to be doing your thing every day, and that's how you get to feel good. That's where the confidence comes from. So when you step on the field, you can deliver it. But so it was definitely a challenging season. And I think even though we had its challenges, like one little thing could have flipped and it could have gone our way one day. So it was a really good team. It was a good experience. It's just, challenging times for sure.
So for me, it was interesting because, I mean, looking at that season and seeing Vini Dantas and Nick Pereira and Chris Toth all on the same team was just, it was like, what's happening? Here's, I mean, here's these guys that I've never seen as teammates before, and now they're teammates on the same team. And yeah, I agree. There was a lot of games that could have gone very easily, could have flipped for the Tacoma Stars that year. But that was the only season that you played in Tacoma. You say that you went there for family purposes. Why did you then end up going back to Baltimore briefly and then on to Florida?
Well, I ended up playing 2 seasons there. I played that season, and then the following season, I've played the majority of that season.
That's right.
And then I went to Baltimore at the end of it. To keep it short, and when we moved to Seattle, it was our desire to live closer to family, but also live in the Pacific Northwest. Shortly after we moved there, a few of my wife's family started moving out of there because of political reasons and because of the COVID and how they saw COVID and all that. So it wasn't like I said, I'm not trying to go get political, but they all, like, shortly after we moved there, a couple family members moved out. We experienced the Pacific Northwest for ourselves. We really also decided that wasn't what we wanted, and then we decided to follow after that.
Okay. And so you finished up that season in Baltimore. And I know a lot of people, including myself and probably Rick Benson, were going, okay, well, this is a comfortable fit. We know Vini Dantas in Baltimore. Sure. That's kind of where we first got introduced to Vini Dantas, was in Baltimore. But that didn't last very long. And you end up going down to Florida, and boy, the Florida Tropics were loaded. I mean, what a stacked roster.
Yeah. No, yeah. For me at that point too, last season, I was at a place where I was transitioning work outside playing. I was doing some other things, and I was putting a lot of energy into some other things. For every Baltimore Blast that's watching, Baltimore Blast fan that's watching this, Baltimore did sit down with me. We did talk, but my life and everything that I had to decide for my family always was dragging me away from Baltimore. And the Baltimore Blast is one, if not the most professional team this league has to offer. And it's when I was talking to them, being there full time was never an option for me. So that's where the conversation just ended, because they want to carry things a certain way, and I 1,000% agree with what they do. It just didn't work out. So that's when I looked for other options where I could do some traveling back and forth, or go for a period of time, but also be home for a period of time.
Right.
And that's when the Florida approached me with an offer that fit that mold, and it worked for me.
So how is it playing with the Tropics? I mean, like I said, they had an all-star cast there. Did you feel like you fit in with that group of guys quickly, or did it take a little bit of time to gel as a team? I mean, it was just an all-star roster.
Honestly, my role with the Tropics and talking to Clay last year was, they had Zach at the time, which is an outstanding soccer player. They had Taylor, they had Bruno. So my role was to come in more on a mentorship type system, because I wasn't going to be there full time, was just to help these young guys to really understand the game and help them in any way I can and try to be the best third string in the league. Like that was my as I'm coming into Florida, that's like the conversation and of course the season played out and things happened and Zach ended up going somewhere. And then Dieguez comes back. So there's lots that happened. And to go back to your question, I think Florida, in many ways, because the Baltimore Blast had the success that they had, a lot of teams are just studying what the Blast did and trying to implement their own way, but with a lot of that blueprint of Baltimore Blast soccer, right? So as soon as I got there, what I'm hearing is things that I've been hearing this whole time in the league and how the movement happens and what they expect from a target. I'm also 9 years deep at this point in the league. So it's, indoor soccer is indoor soccer. So, yeah.
Right. So when the news came down that Florida wasn't going to be playing this season, and the rest of the players, at least the higher end, I guess, of the roster, were going to be picked up as free agents, and we started seeing these individuals, go, end up all around the league. It took the news that you had signed with Texas came a little bit later than most of the other players. A lot of the other players had already, you saw a lot of those guys had already signed with the teams that they were going to go to. But I didn't know this. Obviously, I didn't know the story about the family in Tacoma. I expected that you were going to be ended up going to Tacoma. But now here you are in Texas.
Yeah.
And Brad Namdar has assisted in bringing together a pretty solid core of players. You guys got a good roster going on. How do you like playing in Texas?
It is fun. It's fun. For me, I wasn't gonna play this season. That's the truth. And I live about 2 hours away from where they do things. For practices, it's like an hour and a half or an hour and 45 minutes, depending on the day. So when I opened up a company here where I live, and I do a lot of soccer coaching, and my focus has been on that. And once the offers started coming, my answer was always the same. Like, this is my focus. If I can somehow make it work, I would love to talk, but it's going to be hard to make it work, right? Because there's a lot. Texas, we don't have a lot of snow. We don't have a lot of things. So our programs are running, pretty much year round. So when the reason why you didn't see me being announced by anybody is because I simply wasn't signed. I wasn't going to play. And once the schedule finally came out, I was able to pair it with my work schedule and really sit down with the organizations and say, hey, this is what I can actually commit to. And it's like, might be some conflicts I may have. Are you okay with that? And if so, what does that look like? So that only then I was able to sit and look people in the eye and actually make a commitment or not. So for me, I think the biggest motivating factor for me right now to keep playing is to play in front of my family, my 2 boys and my wife. And last year I wasn't able to do that because I was traveling for every game. So it's just super tough. And now I get to, walk into the fields with my kids and and it's been really, really good. For me, I get to practice every day again, which is something I really missed. Cool. The driving is crazy. It's a little bit taxing, but I think the pluses definitely outweigh the minuses, and I think this team is on the verge of some really, really good stuff. You have some young kids that are just so hungry to make an impact in this league, and it's awesome to kind of tag along, mentor, and help them understand the game. And you have so much knowledge from Tatu, Sagu, and Nick, and just to kind of be a 10-year vet and say my piece when needs to be said, and score a goal here and there. But yeah, I'm enjoying myself.
How do you like working with Tatu?
It's interesting. It has its days. I think Tatu is super passionate, and he wouldn't have had the success that he had in this game if he wasn't. But passionate. I've Danny Kelly was crazy. Tatu's crazy. Every coach needs to have a little bit of crazy in them to be impactful. And I think, and I say this with all respect, with all respect. I think these guys know so much, and they can give so much to the sport. Well, they have given so much to the sport, right? So it's nice to see it, and with him being a target and kind of, it's immediate. He can relate. He can give tips. He can impact. And when you do something, and he's like, "That's exactly what I've been asking for." So it's really cool.
That is really, really cool. Well, listen. I really appreciate your time. We've got 2 games coming up today. The Ambush are playing in Baltimore, and I think the Monterey Flash are going to the Chihuahua Savage today.
Right.
So I'm going to be picking up those games here in a little bit.
Nice.
Vini Dantas, you've always been one of my favorite players. Never always playing for any of my favorite teams. but I really do enjoy you. I really do enjoy you. And I appreciate, this isn't the first time that you and I have spoken, and I appreciate the time that you've given me, and you've been very gracious with your story. Thanks for coming and joining me today, buddy.
Thank you, Craig, for having me. And anybody that's watching, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you guys give him your follows, your subscriptions, everything, because he deserves it.
All right. Thank you very much, my friend. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.